I'm Stephanie, I'm 32 years old, and I never expected that inheriting my grandmother's house would tear my family apart. When my sister Amanda moved in temporarily, I thought I was helping family. Instead, she slowly began trying to take over, acting like the place was hers. At our annual family barbecue, everything came to a head. Amanda smirked and told me it was time for me to move out. What happened next would change everything forever. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this story of family betrayal and standing up for yourself resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about finding your voice. My grandmother Elaine raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was just 8 years old. Amanda was 12 at the time, and the tragedy affected us each differently. While I found comfort in Grandma Elaine's warm hugs and sugar cookies, Amanda grew distant and resentful that our lives had changed so dramatically. The house itself was a charming 2-story colonial in a quiet Massachusetts suburb. It had 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon, and a beautiful backyard where my grandmother tended her prized rose garden. Every corner held memories for me. The scratches on the hallway wall that marked our heights as we grew. The dent in the living room floor from where I once dropped my science project. The window seat in the sunroom where Grandma taught me to knit while telling stories about her youth. For 24 years, that house was my safe haven. I helped Grandma repaint the shutters every spring. I mowed the lawn every Saturday in summer, and I decorated the porch with pumpkins every fall. When winter came, we would sit by the fireplace, drinking hot chocolate and playing board games. Those simple moments created an unbreakable bond between us. As Amanda grew older, she visited less frequently. She moved to Chicago for college and only returned for major holidays. During those visits, she would always comment on how old-fashioned the house was, and how she would update everything if it were hers. Grandma would just smile and change the subject, but I noticed the hurt in her eyes. When Grandma was diagnosed with terminal cancer, I took a leave of absence from my job as an elementary school teacher to care for her. Those final months were precious beyond words. We looked through old photo albums, we watched classic movies, and we had deep conversations about life and its meaning. One evening, as the sunset cast a golden glow across her bedroom, Grandma held my hand and told me she was leaving the house to me. "You love this place like I do, Stephanie," she whispered. "You understand that a home is more than just walls and a roof. It is a keeper of memories, a shelter for the heart. I know you will honor that." I tried to protest, saying we should not discuss such things, but she insisted on making her wishes clear. She had already updated her will with her lawyer. When I asked about Amanda, Grandma explained that she had set aside money for her instead, believing Amanda would prefer that over property that needed maintenance and care. After Grandma passed, the lawyer confirmed her wishes. The house was now legally mine, along with a small trust to help with the upkeep. Amanda received a considerable sum of money, which seemed to satisfy her at the funeral. She hugged me and said she was happy for me, that the house suited me more. Anyway, I felt relieved that there would be no conflict between us. 3 years passed peacefully. I continued teaching at the local elementary school, and I maintained the house just as Grandma would have wanted. I hosted holiday gatherings, keeping our family traditions alive. Then came the phone call that would eventually upend everything. Amanda called me in tears. She and her husband Frank had lost their apartment in Chicago after Frank was laid off from his accounting job. They had burned through most of her inheritance with an expensive lifestyle and poor investments. Now they needed a place to stay while they got back on their feet. Being family, I did not hesitate to offer them temporary shelter in our grandmother's house, now my house. "It will just be for a few months," Amanda promised, "until Frank finds a new position and we save enough for a security deposit on a new place." They arrived with 6 suitcases and numerous boxes. I helped them settle into the guest bedroom. I cleared space in the closets, and I made room in the garage for their belongings. First, everything was harmonious. Amanda cooked dinner twice a week. Frank helped with yard work, and we spent our evenings catching up on the years we had grown apart. I enjoyed having family around again, and it felt good to help them in their time of need. But subtle changes began occurring around the 3-month mark. I came home from work one day to find the living room furniture rearranged. When I mentioned it, Amanda said, "I hope you don't mind. This layout makes much more sense for the flow of the room." Before I could respond, she added, Frank and I were thinking about moving into the master bedroom since it has the attached bathroom. It would be so much more convenient for us. I was stunned into silence. The master bedroom had been Grandma's room, and now it was mine. My personal things were there, arranged just how I liked them. My private sanctuary. I don't think that would work, I finally said. But you are welcome to use the bathroom when you need to. Amanda pouted, but she dropped the subject. For the moment, more incidents followed. Amanda replaced the curtains in the kitchen without asking. Frank installed a new shower head in the bathroom they used. They began referring to the guest room as our room, and the living room as our living room. When relatives called, Amanda answered the phone with, Hi, you've reached the Lewis residence. As if the house belonged to her and Frank. Then one weekend, I returned from a teacher's conference to find they had converted the small study where I graded papers and prepared lessons into a home office for Frank. My desk had been moved to a corner of my bedroom, my files stacked in boxes. Frank needs a proper workspace to conduct his job search, Amanda explained when I confronted her. It's just temporary. But nothing felt temporary anymore. They had been living with me for 6 months now with no signs of actively looking for their own place. When I gently asked about their plans, Amanda would change the subject or make vague comments about the housing market being too expensive right now. Our extended family began to notice the shift as well. Cousin Lisa visited for coffee one afternoon and pulled me aside before leaving. Is everything okay with you and Amanda? She asked. She was showing me her plans for remodeling the kitchen. She made it sound like this is her house now. I assured Lisa that there must be a misunderstanding, but her words unsettled me deeply. That evening, I overheard Amanda on the phone with our Aunt Caroline. We are thinking of having everyone over for the annual family barbecue, she was saying, to continue Grandma's tradition. Frank and I want to show everyone the changes we've made to the house. The annual barbecue had been Grandma's favorite gathering, something I had continued hosting since her passing. Now Amanda was taking that over too without even discussing it with me. When she ended her call, I confronted her directly. Amanda, I couldn't help overhearing. Why are you planning the family barbecue without talking to me first? She looked surprised, as if it hadn't occurred to her that she should consult me. I thought I would take it off your hands this year. You're always so busy with school. But this is my house, Amanda. I should be involved in decisions about hosting events here. A strange expression crossed her face. A mixture of annoyance and something else I couldn't quite identify. Of course it's your house technically, she said with a dismissive wave. I'm just trying to help. That word technically lingered in the air between us. What did she mean by that? Was there some other way she was viewing the situation? As the planned barbecue date approached, Amanda took over more and more of the preparations. She sent out invitations to the entire extended family without showing me first. She ordered new outdoor furniture for the backyard. She talked about our house to neighbors and relatives. Frank, meanwhile, started measuring walls in the hallway, muttering about opening up the space. When I asked what he was doing, he said casually, just thinking about some renovations that would modernize the place a bit. Feeling increasingly anxious, I checked the property deed one evening when Amanda and Frank were out. There it was in black and white, my name as the sole owner. I also found Grandma's will, explicitly stating her wish for me to have the house. I took photos of these documents with my phone, then carefully returned them to my personal files. The next day I called a lawyer friend, Deborah, and explained the situation. It sounds like your sister and brother-in-law are trying to establish themselves as permanent residents, she said. You need to be clear about boundaries and expectations. How long has it been since they moved in? Almost 7 months now, I admitted. And was there any written agreement about how long they would stay? No, just a verbal understanding that it would be temporary. Deborah advised me to have a formal conversation with them about their timeline for moving out, and to consider drawing up a written agreement if they needed to stay longer. She also warned me to be vigilant about any attempts they might make to claim partial ownership through financial contributions. Be careful about accepting money from them for anything other than basic utilities and groceries, she cautioned. Keep detailed records of any financial transactions. Armed with this advice, I tried to speak with Amanda several times before the barbecue, but she always found reasons to cut our conversations short. She was too busy planning the menu, ordering decorations, or running errands. It became clear that I would have to wait until after the family gathering to address the growing tension. Little did I know that the barbecue itself would force everything into the open in ways I never could have anticipated. The week before the barbecue, tensions in the house reached a breaking point. Amanda had taken over my kitchen entirely, filling the refrigerator with ingredients and covering the counters with serving dishes I had never seen before. When I opened a cupboard to grab my favorite coffee mug, I discovered all my dishes had been rearranged. I needed to make room for the platters we'll use for the barbecue, Amanda explained when I asked. Your system wasn't very efficient. That evening, I noticed Amanda and Frank huddled together at the dining table with paint swatches spread out before them. They quickly gathered them up when I entered the room, but not before I caught a glimpse of the label. Master Bedroom Colors. What are you doing with paint samples for my bedroom? I asked directly. Amanda had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but Frank answered smoothly. We were just discussing some ideas for brightening up the house. Nothing decided yet. But why my bedroom specifically? I pressed. They exchanged a glance before Amanda said, We should talk about this after the barbecue, Stephanie. Everyone is coming in 3 days and there's still so much to do. That night I could not sleep. I kept thinking about all the small ways Amanda and Frank had been claiming my space as their own. The bathroom cabinet now filled with their toiletries. The garage transformed into storage for Frank's tools and Amanda's craft supplies. The kitchen reorganized to Amanda's preferences. My own possessions gradually shifted to make room for theirs until I sometimes felt like a guest in my own home. The next morning I called my best friend Jasmine for advice. They're totally taking advantage of you, Jasmine said bluntly after I explained the situation. You need to stand up for yourself before they completely take over. But they're family, I protested weakly. And they have nowhere else to go. Are you sure about that? Jasmine asked. Have they actually been looking for another place? Have they saved any money toward moving out? Or are they just getting comfortable with the free living arrangement? Her questions made me realize how little I knew about their actual plans. Whenever I brought up the topic, Amanda deflected with vague assurances that they were working on it. Later that day, I overheard Amanda on the phone in the backyard. She didn't realize I had come home early from school. It's practically ours already, she was saying to someone. Stephanie is so busy with her teaching job, she barely notices what we do around here. We've been making all the decisions about the house for months. There was a pause as she listened to the person on the other end. No, we haven't discussed permanent arrangements with her yet, but after the barbecue I think it will be the right time. Frank and I have put so much work into this place. It makes more sense for us to stay and for Stephanie to find somewhere smaller. She doesn't need all this space anyway. I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were planning to push me out of my own home, the home my grandmother had specifically left to me. That evening, I went through my important papers again and found the business card of the lawyer who had handled Grandma's will. I sent him an email asking for clarification about my legal rights as the homeowner and what obligations, if any, I had toward family members staying with me. His response came the next morning. I was the sole legal owner, and technically Amanda and Frank could be considered tenants at will, even without a formal rental agreement. I had the right to ask them to leave with reasonable notice, typically 30 days in our state. Armed with this information, I felt more secure, but still dreaded the confrontation that seemed inevitable. I decided to wait until after the barbecue, hoping that the presence of other family members might keep the situation from escalating too dramatically. The day before the big event, I came home to find Amanda directing Frank and 2 of his friends as they moved my grandmother's antique china cabinet from the dining room to the garage. What are you doing? I exclaimed, rushing to stop them. We need the space for the buffet table tomorrow, Amanda explained casually. This old thing was in the way. That old thing was Grandma's prized possession, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She specifically mentioned it in her will as something she wanted preserved in the house. Amanda rolled her eyes. No one uses formal china anymore, Stephanie. We need to modernize this place. After the barbecue, we should talk about other changes that would make this house more functional. What kind of changes? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Well, for one thing, we were thinking the smallest bedroom would make a perfect home office for Frank, and the master bedroom really should go to us since there are two of us and only one of you. I stared at her, speechless. The smallest bedroom was currently my bedroom since I had given them the larger guest room, and now they wanted my current room too. Amanda, we need to have a serious conversation about your long-term plans, I began. But she cut me off. After the barbecue, Stephanie. Let's just get through tomorrow and then we can discuss everything. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about Grandma and how much the house had meant to her, how she had trusted me to care for it, how she had specifically chosen me as its inheritor. I also thought about Amanda's apparent plan to take over completely. In the quiet darkness of my room, I made a decision. I would not let Amanda and Frank push me out of my inheritance. I would not dishonor Grandma's wishes. After the barbecue, I would insist they make concrete plans to move out. And if they refused, I would have to take more formal steps. With that resolution made, I finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that things would come to a head much sooner than I expected. The morning of the barbecue dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for an outdoor gathering. I woke early, my stomach knotted with anxiety about the day ahead. From downstairs, I could already hear Amanda bustling around the kitchen, pots and pans clanging as she prepared food for the festivities. By the time I made my way downstairs, she had transformed the place. Balloons tied to the porch railing swayed in the gentle breeze. A red checkered tablecloth covered the long table in the backyard. The smell of marinating meat filled the air. "There you are," Amanda said when she spotted me. "Could you finish setting up the chairs outside?" Frank went to pick up the ice and extra drinks. I nodded and headed to the backyard, noticing how she gave directions rather than requests, as if she were the one in charge. As I arranged the chairs, I realized she had placed a new welcome sign on the back gate. "Welcome to the Lewis family barbecue," with just Amanda and Frank's last name, not mine. The first guests arrived around noon. Aunt Caroline and Uncle Dave pulled into the driveway, followed closely by Cousin Lisa and her husband Tim. Amanda greeted them at the door with wide-open arms. "Welcome to our home," she exclaimed, ushering them inside. "We're so happy you could make it." Our home. Those two small words made my jaw clench, but I forced a smile as I joined the greeting line. More relatives arrived in quick succession. Uncle Robert and his new wife Susan, cousins Mike and Jennifer with their children, and several family friends who had been attending Grandma's BBQs for years. Amanda led everyone through the house, pointing out changes she and Frank had made as if she were the lady of the manor. "We replaced these old curtains," she would say. Or, "We're thinking of painting this room next." Not once did she acknowledge that these were decisions she had made without my input, or that the house was in fact mine. Most unsettling was how the family responded. They complimented Amanda on her beautiful home, and nodded approvingly at the changes. Had everyone forgotten that Grandma had left the house to me? Or had Amanda been telling them a different story? As we moved to the backyard, Uncle Robert pulled me aside. "The place looks great, Stephanie. Nice of you to let your sister take the lead on hosting. You always were the quiet one in the family." Before I could correct his assumption, Amanda called everyone to attention, announcing that the food was ready. She stood at the head of the table, the position Grandma always took as the host, and directed everyone to their seats. Somehow, I ended up at the far end, almost as if I were just another guest. Frank manned the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs with practiced ease, accepting compliments on his backyard setup and his expert grilling skills. I watched as he explained to Uncle Dave about the improvements he planned to make to the patio next summer. "We're thinking of extending it another 6 feet, he said, gesturing expansively. "Maybe adding a built-in fire pit over there." Uncle Dave nodded appreciatively. "You two have really made this place your own. Elaine would be proud of how you're taking care of her house." I felt a hand on my arm and turned to find Cousin Lisa looking at me with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "You seem upset." I hesitated, not wanting to create drama in the middle of the gathering. "It's complicated," I finally said. "Amanda and Frank have been staying with me temporarily, but there seems to be some confusion about arrangements." Lisa's eyebrows rose. "Temporary?" The way Amanda talks, I thought they had moved in permanently. She told Aunt Caroline they were taking over the mortgage payments and everything. My blood ran cold. There is no mortgage. The house is fully paid off and it's in my name only. Lisa looked confused. That's not what Amanda has been telling people. She mentioned something about a family agreement to transfer ownership since she and Frank need the space more than you do. Before I could respond, Amanda's voice rang out, calling everyone for a tour of the house. I watched in disbelief as she led our relatives through each room, describing future renovation plans as if she owned the place. And this will be our expanded master suite, she announced, standing in my bedroom doorway. We'll knock down this wall to incorporate the smaller bedroom, creating a proper walk-in closet and enlarged bathroom. What about Stephanie? Aunt Caroline asked, looking around as if just noticing I live there too. Amanda waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Stephanie understands we need the space more. She's hardly ever home anyway with her teaching job. She can easily find a small apartment closer to her school. All eyes turned to me, standing silently in the hallway. I wanted to protest, to set the record straight right then and there, but the words stuck in my throat. This was not how I wanted to address the situation in front of the entire family during what was supposed to be a celebration. We'll discuss it later, I managed to say, forcing a tight smile. The tour continued with Amanda pointing out more plan changes. By the time we returned to the backyard, my hands were shaking with suppressed emotion. I excused myself to the kitchen, needing a moment alone. I stood at the sink, gripping the counter's edge, trying to steady my breathing. The framed photo of Grandma Elaine on the windowsill caught my eye. Her kind eyes seemed to look directly at me, and I could almost hear her voice. Stand up for yourself, sweetheart. Some people will take everything if you let them. Aunt Caroline entered the kitchen, interrupting my thoughts. Such a lovely gathering, she said, placing her empty glass on the counter. Your grandmother would have loved seeing the family together like this. Yes, she would, I agreed, grateful for the reminder of what these gatherings were truly about. Amanda has such a knack for entertaining, Caroline continued. It seems right somehow that she's carrying on Elaine's traditions in Elaine's home. I opened my mouth to correct her misunderstanding, but was interrupted by Amanda calling everyone back to the table for dessert. The moment passed and I followed Caroline back outside, the weight of unspoken truths heavy on my shoulders. As the afternoon wore on, I became increasingly invisible in my own home. Amanda directed conversations, made decisions about when to serve dessert, and even shared stories about Grandma as if she had been the one closest to her. I sat quietly, wondering how we had reached this point and how I could reclaim my place without causing a family rift. The answer came sooner than expected, and in a way I never anticipated. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the backyard, Amanda called for everyone's attention by tapping her glass with a spoon. The family gathered around the table, plates loaded with Grandma's famous apple crumble, a recipe I had shared with Amanda just that morning. I want to thank everyone for coming today, Amanda began, standing at the head of the table. It means so much to Frank and me to continue Grandma's tradition of bringing the family together in this special home. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. I noticed several relatives nodding appreciatively. As you all know, Amanda continued, this house has been in our family for generations. Grandma Elaine loved this place, and she wanted it to remain a gathering spot for all of us. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, aware that she was carefully avoiding mentioning who Grandma had actually left the house to. Frank and I have put a lot of thought into how to best honor her wishes, Amanda said, reaching for Frank's hand. We've decided to make some significant improvements to the property to ensure it remains a comfortable family home for many years to come. Uncle Robert raised his glass to Amanda and Frank for keeping Elaine's legacy alive. Others joined the toast while I sat frozen, unable to believe what was happening. Amanda was effectively announcing her ownership of my house, and everyone was congratulating her. We have some preliminary renovation plans we'd be happy to share with anyone who is interested, Frank added. We're thinking of starting with the kitchen next month. That sounds wonderful, Aunt Caroline said. This kitchen, charming as it is, could use modernizing. Amanda smiled, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. Then she looked directly at me for the first time since her speech began. There was something in her expression, a mixture of triumph and challenge that made my stomach tighten. Of course, these changes mean we will need to make some adjustments to the current living arrangements, she said, her voice suddenly sweeter. Stephanie has been so generous sharing the house with us these past months. But with the renovations coming up, it really makes sense for her to find her own place now. A heavy silence fell over the table. Everyone seemed to be processing this unexpected announcement. What do you mean? Cousin Lisa asked, looking between Amanda and me. I thought you were staying with Stephanie temporarily. Amanda laughed lightly, as if Lisa had made a silly mistake. Oh, that was the initial plan, of course, but things have evolved. Frank and I have put so much work into the house already. And with Stephanie's busy schedule, she's hardly ever here to enjoy it. Frank nodded in agreement. Plus, a house this size really needs constant attention. We have the time to devote to it that Stephanie simply doesn't. I could feel heat rising to my face as they continued to speak about me as if I weren't sitting right there. As if my grandmother had not explicitly left her home to me. As if I had not been maintaining it successfully for 3 years before they arrived. I think Stephanie should have a say in this, Cousin Mike suggested, looking at me with concern. Amanda turned to me with that same smirk that had been increasingly common in our interactions. Of course she does. Stephanie, you understand why this makes sense, right? You're always saying how much work the house is. This way you can find a nice little apartment close to your school. Something easier to manage with your teaching schedule. All eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This was not how I had planned to address the situation, but Amanda had forced my hand. Actually, I began, my voice surprisingly steady despite my inner turmoil. I have no plans to move out of my house. Amanda's smirk faltered slightly. Our house, you mean? And really, Stephanie, be practical. Frank and I need the space more than you do. We're thinking about starting a family soon. It's time for you to move out, sis, she added, her tone casual but her eyes hard. We can help you find a place, something cozier. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others looked confused. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. I thought you two had worked this out already. There is nothing to work out, I said, my voice gaining strength. This house was left to me by Grandma Elaine. My name is on the deed. Amanda and Frank have been staying here as my guests. Amanda's face flushed. That's not entirely accurate. We have been contributing to the household. Buying groceries occasionally and helping with utilities for 7 months does not make you co-owners, I pointed out. We've done far more than that, Frank interjected. All the improvements, the maintenance, the yard work. That's what tenants typically do, I said, surprising myself with my directness. It doesn't grant ownership rights. Amanda's expression hardened. This is not the time or place for this discussion, Stephanie. We can talk about it privately later. You brought it up publicly, I reminded her. You announced to our entire family that I should move out of my own house. The tension around the table was palpable now. Some relatives looked embarrassed, others curious, a few uncomfortable. Grandma's photograph seemed to watch over us from the sideboard where I had placed it for the occasion. I stood up slowly, my decision made. If you'll excuse me for a moment, there's something I need to get. As I walked into the house, I could hear the awkward murmurs behind me. This was not how I had wanted things to unfold, but perhaps it was necessary. Sometimes the truth needed to be stated plainly for everyone to hear. I walked through the quiet house, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors that Grandma and I had refinished together the summer before she got sick. Every corner held memories. The living room where we had watched old movies on rainy days. The kitchen where she taught me to bake her famous cinnamon rolls. The study where she would help me with homework. This was my home, not just legally but emotionally, and I would not be pushed out of it by Amanda's manipulations. I entered my bedroom and went straight to the locked drawer in my desk, where I kept important documents. My hands trembled slightly as I retrieved the folder containing the property deed, Grandma's will, and the letter from her lawyer confirming my sole ownership. I also took the small notebook where I had been documenting Amanda and Frank's gradual takeover, including dates and specific incidents. Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself that I was not being cruel or unfair. I had opened my home to them when they needed help. I had been patient for 7 months while they made themselves increasingly at home, but enough was enough. When I returned to the backyard, the conversation had continued in my absence. Amanda was speaking animatedly, gesturing with her hands. We've already started planning the nursery, she was saying. We thought Stephanie's current room would be perfect since it gets the morning sun. Frank nodded enthusiastically. We found the most adorable crib last weekend. Sustainable bamboo. Very eco-friendly. I stood silently at the edge of the gathering, the folder clutched in my hands, taking in this new information. They were expecting a baby and had already decided to take over my bedroom for the nursery without even discussing it with me. A baby? Aunt Caroline exclaimed. How wonderful. When are you due? Amanda placed a hand on her still flat stomach. Not for another 7 months. We just found out last week. We wanted to wait to tell everyone. But since we're discussing house arrangements, all the more reason why you two need the space more than Stephanie does, Uncle Robert agreed. A growing family needs room. I cleared my throat and all eyes turned to me. Congratulations on your pregnancy, Amanda. That's wonderful news. She smiled, clearly thinking I was softening my position. Thank you. So you understand now why we need the house? No, I said gently but firmly. I don't understand why your pregnancy means I should give up my home. Her smile faltered. Stephanie, be reasonable. You're just one person. We will be 3. There are plenty of lovely family homes available for purchase or rent, I pointed out. I'm happy to help you search for one that meets your needs. Amanda's expression hardened again. Why should we move when we're already established here? Everyone agrees it makes more sense for you to find somewhere smaller. I looked around the table. Some relatives were nodding in agreement with Amanda, while others looked uncertain. It was time to set the record straight. I placed the folder on the table and opened it to reveal the property deed. I think there has been some confusion about the ownership of this house. I would like to clarify the situation. Frank shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Amanda's smirk vanished as she recognized the documents. This is the property deed for grandmother Elaine's house, I explained, turning it so others could see. As you can see, it lists me, Stephanie Grace Morgan, as the sole owner. There are no co-owners, no shared equity, no mortgage. I turned to the next document. This is grandmother's will in which she explicitly states her wish for me to inherit the house. And this, I continued, revealing the third document, is a letter from her lawyer confirming the legal transfer of ownership after her passing. A stunned silence fell over the table. Forks paused midair. Several relatives exchanged surprised glances. But Amanda said, Aunt Caroline began, then stopped abruptly. What exactly did Amanda tell you? I asked gently. Aunt Caroline looked uncomfortable. She mentioned something about a verbal agreement. That you had decided the house was too much for you to manage alone, and that they would be taking over. I shook my head. There was never any such agreement. Amanda and Frank asked to stay temporarily when they lost their apartment. I agreed to help them in their time of need, as family should. That was 7 months ago. We have been contributing financially, Frank insisted, his face reddening. We have rights as tenants. Yes, you have been contributing to utilities and groceries, which I appreciate, I acknowledged. And yes, you do have tenant rights, which include proper notice before vacating. But tenants do not become owners simply by paying for utilities or making cosmetic changes to a property. Amanda's face had drained of color. She stared at the documents on the table, then at the faces of our family members as the truth sank in. There must be some mistake, she said weakly. Grandma would have wanted the house to go to the person starting a family, to continue the legacy. Grandma made her wishes very clear, I replied, keeping my voice steady. She chose me as the inheritor because she knew how much I loved this house and would care for it as she did. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. I think we all owe Stephanie an apology. It seems we have been operating under a misunderstanding. Amanda stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the patio floor. This is ridiculous. We have put so much work into this place. We had plans. Plans you made without consulting me, the homeowner, I pointed out. Plans that involved pushing me out of my own house. You never appreciated this place the way we do, Amanda accused, her voice rising. You have barely changed anything since Grandma died. It's like a museum in there. I have maintained it exactly as Grandma would have wanted, I replied, with respect for its history and character. Frank placed a restraining hand on Amanda's arm. Maybe we should continue this discussion privately, he suggested, clearly embarrassed by the public revelation. But Amanda was too far gone in her anger. You always were Grandma's favorite. She left you the house because you sucked up to her all those years while I was building my own life. A collective gasp went up from the family. Even Frank looked shocked at her outburst. Amanda! Aunt Caroline exclaimed. That's enough. I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited into matching her anger. I loved Grandma and she loved me. She also loved you, which is why she left you a substantial financial inheritance. An inheritance that, by your own admission, you and Frank have already spent. Amanda's face crumpled, tears springing to her eyes. That's not fair. We had investments that went bad. We had expenses. Life is often challenging, I said quietly. But that does not give you the right to try to take what is not yours. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone seemed frozen in place, processing the dramatic turn the family barbecue had taken. Finally, I spoke again, my decision made. Amanda, Frank, I think it's best if you make arrangements to move out. Given the circumstances, I believe 30 days is a reasonable time frame. 30 days. Amanda repeated incredulously. Where are we supposed to go in 30 days? I'm pregnant. I understand that makes the situation more urgent for you, I acknowledged. Which is why you should start looking for suitable family housing immediately, rather than trying to take over my home. Frank, seeming to finally grasp the reality of the situation, nodded slowly. She's right, Amanda. We knew this was temporary all along. We just got comfortable. Amanda turned on him. We were building a future here. We were making plans for our baby. Plans that depended on pushing Stephanie out of her rightfully owned home, Cousin Lisa pointed out gently. That was never going to work, Amanda. Amanda looked around the table, seeking support, but found mostly uncomfortable or disapproving faces. The truth had been laid bare and there was no going back. I cannot believe this, she said, her voice breaking. My own sister throwing me out when I'm expecting a baby. I'm not throwing you out, I corrected. I'm asking you to respect my ownership of this house and to make appropriate arrangements to find your own home, as adults should. Aunt Caroline stood up and approached Amanda. Come, dear, let's go inside and talk calmly about options. There are plenty of lovely places you and Frank could consider. As they walked toward the house, Amanda turned back one last time. You will regret this, Stephanie. Family should come first. I agree, I said quietly. Family should come first. Not manipulation. Not lies. Not trying to take what belongs to someone else. The barbecue effectively ended after that. Family members awkwardly made their excuses and began to leave, some stopping to offer me quiet support, others avoiding eye contact altogether. Within an hour, only Frank remained in the backyard, helping me clean up while Amanda had locked herself in their bedroom. I'm sorry about all this, he said as we stacked chairs. Things just got out of hand. Amanda really convinced herself that this house should be ours. I nodded, accepting his apology, but still maintaining my boundary. You have 24 hours to present me with a concrete plan for moving out within 30 days, I told him. I think that's more than fair given the circumstances. He agreed without argument, seeming relieved in a way that the situation had finally been clarified. As the sun set completely on what had surely been the most dramatic family barbecue in our history, I stood alone in my backyard, the property deed still on the table, and felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Grandma's wind chimes tinkled softly from the porch, almost like her gentle laughter. I could almost hear her saying, "Sometimes standing your ground is the kindest thing you can do, both for yourself and for others."